You're told AI is here to help you. It will make your work faster, clear the repetitive stuff, draft the email, summarize the meeting, clean up the report, give you back the time that you need. And for a lot of people, that part is true. The tool helps.
But underneath that promise, another question is starting to form inside the modern workplace. If AI makes me faster, cheaper, easier to measure, and easier to replicate, does it make me more valuable, or does it make the role less dependent on me? That is the tension at the center of this episode, because the deepest fear is not simply that AI replaces the worker. It is that the worker is asked to improve the very system that may weaken their own leverage.
That's the uncomfortable part. A worker can be doing exactly what leadership asked him to do, adopting the tool, becoming more productive, moving faster, and still wonder whether they're helping building a workplace where they become less necessary.
Exactly. And that is why this is not an anti-AI conversation. The issue is not whether AI can be useful. It can be. The issue is whether usefulness still gives workers leverage. For decades, the workplace bargain had a basic shape. You brought skill, judgment, time, experience, and effort. The company paid you, promoted you, trained you, and gave you some path toward greater security or responsibility. That bargain was never perfect, but it was recognizable. Now AI is changing the terms. Workers are still being asked to bring their judgment, their knowledge, and their process. But increasingly, that process can be captured, analyzed, automated, or redistributed across the organization.
And workers seem to feel that tension already. Pew found that more US workers are worried than hopeful about future AI use in the workplace. Gallup found workplace AI use has nearly doubled in 2 years, so this isn't some distant thing in the future. It's already entering the office.
That is the key shift. AI has moved from being an external technology story to becoming an internal operating layer. It is not just something companies talk about in strategy decks. It is appearing inside customer support, software development, marketing, finance, HR, legal, operations, sales, administration, and management itself. And once it enters the workflow, it changes what work means. It changes what gets measured. It changes how much output is expected. It changes how managers think about headcount. It changes whether institutional knowledge lives primarily in people or increasingly inside systems.
And leadership is moving fast. Microsoft's Work Trend Index says a lot of leaders are already thinking about digital labor, AI roles, and even headcount reductions. So workers are not imagining the asymmetry here.
No, they are not. Leaders often see AI as capacity, a way to scale teams, extend output, reduce bottlenecks, and redesign work. And from a business perspective, that is rational. Companies are under pressure to become more efficient, but employees may experience the same trend differently. They may hear capacity and wonder whether that means fewer people. They may hear productivity and wonder who captures the gain. They may hear AI first and wonder whether human workers are becoming the fallback option rather than the default.
That's a very different conversation than AI will take your job. It's more subtle than that.
It is, because in many cases, AI does not begin by removing the worker. It begins by changing the worker's relationship to the job. The worker becomes more productive, but also more visible, more assisted, but also more measurable, more capable, but possibly less scarce. And that is where anxiety becomes rational. If your knowledge helps train the system, if your workflow helps define the automation, if your performance data helps prove the business case, then the natural question becomes, what do you receive in return?
So the issue isn't productivity itself, it's the bargain around productivity.
Yes, productivity by itself is not the problem. In a healthy workplace, productivity gains can create better pay, better tools, shorter work weeks, stronger companies, more resilient teams, and more meaningful work. But productivity without reciprocity starts to feel like devaluation. If the gains flow upward while the risks flow downward, Workers do not experience AI as empowerment. They experience it as extraction.
And that's where we're going in this episode. Not into a generic panic about job loss, but into the workplace bargain itself.
Because the question now is not simply whether AI will change work. It already is. The question is what kind of bargain emerges on the other side. Will AI make workers more valuable, more skilled, more mobile, and more secure? Or will it make work more efficient while making people feel more disposable? That is the fault line, and it begins with one uncomfortable truth. The scariest version of AI at work may not be losing your job. It may be improving the system that weakens your leverage.
So today on Toronto Talks, the training your replacement economy.
And the new workplace bargain that every leader, worker and organisation now has to face.
If the first part of this conversation is about anxiety, this next part has to be about honesty. Because companies are not adopting AI only because it sounds impressive. In some places, the tool really does work.
Yes, and that is why this episode matters. The real tension is not between workers and useless machines. It is between productivity and power. Once AI helps a worker do more in less time, that gain becomes valuable. And once it becomes valuable, someone captures it. The question is whether that value returns to the worker as pay, autonomy, training, mobility, or relief, or whether it returns mainly to the organisation as higher output expectations, reduced hiring, and thinner teams.
So we have to be fair here. This isn't just corporate theatre. There are real productivity gains on the table.
And that matters because the workplace bargain is not being challenged by a fantasy. It is being challenged by measurable gains. If AI were useless, the conversation would be much easier. Workers could ignore it, companies would stop experimenting with it, and the whole thing would fade into another overhyped technology cycle. But that is not what the evidence shows. In customer support, writing, software development, consulting, style analysis, marketing, research, and operations, AI is already improving speed, output, or quality in specific contexts. The uncomfortable part is not that AI fails. The uncomfortable part is that it often works well enough to change the economics of work.
All right, Sophie, let's start with the evidence. Where would you say the strongest productivity gains are actually showing up?
One of the clearest examples comes from customer support. A large study of more than 5,000 customer support agents found that access to a generative AI assistant increased productivity by about 15%, measured by issues resolved per hour. That is a meaningful result because it was not only a lab experiment, it was deployed work. The AI helped agents respond more effectively, move faster through problems, and draw on patterns from prior successful interactions. And the gains were not evenly distributed. Less experienced and lower skilled workers tended to benefit the most because the tool helped them communicate more like stronger performers and navigate situations they had not yet learned through experience.
Yeah, that part is fascinating because, on one hand, it sounds genuinely positive. I mean, if a less experienced worker can perform better, then that's genuinely empowering, right?
And that is why this conversation has to stay balanced. AI can function as a coach. It can reduce frustration. It can give newer workers access to better phrasing, better answers, and better judgment patterns. In that sense, AI can compress the learning curve. But the same fact can look different from a management perspective. If a tool helps newer workers perform more like experienced ones, a company may ask whether it needs as many experienced workers. If a tool reduces the value of accumulated know-how in certain tasks, then experience itself may become less scarce. So the same productivity gain can improve an individual worker's performance while also changing the bargaining power of the role.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. So I guess the question isn't just did the worker get better? It's more like what happens after the organization itself sees that the worker's gotten better, right?
Exactly. Productivity data does not sit still. It becomes evidence. It becomes a business case. It becomes a budgeting conversation. It becomes a headcount conversation. That is where workers feel the unease. They may be told, use this tool because it helps you, but they also know that every improvement becomes visible to the organization. If the same team can answer more tickets, write more content, process more reports, or produce more analysis, leadership eventually asks whether the same amount of labor is still required.
Yeah, and that exact dynamic isn't just in customer service, right? We're seeing the same sort of thing happening in writing and knowledge work too.
Absolutely. In one well-known study on professional writing tasks, access to ChatGPT reduced completion time by about 40% and increased output quality by about 18%. That is significant because writing is not a niche task. It sits inside marketing, administration, sales, management, consulting, research, education, customer communication, and countless internal workflows. If AI helps people draft faster, summarize faster, and revise faster, then the productivity effect spreads across the white-collar economy. Again, that can be good for workers. It can remove blank page friction. It can help people express ideas more clearly. It can reduce the time spent on low-value drafting, but it also changes the baseline. Yesterday's impressive speed can become tomorrow's expected pace.
That feels like the hidden pressure. Like, the tool starts as assistance, but then the new output level essentially becomes the new standard, right?
That is often how productivity tools work. At first, they create relief, then they create expectation. Once an organization sees that work can move faster, the old timeline begins to look inefficient. The worker may not feel liberated. They may feel like the treadmill just accelerated. And if the productivity gain is not matched by higher compensation, more control, or some kind of reciprocal benefit, then the promise of empowerment starts to feel pretty thin.
Right, but AI doesn't help with everything, right? There's a bunch of research showing that it can actually make people worse on certain tasks. Isn't that true?
It is. The Harvard Business School and Boston Consulting Group research describes AI as having a jagged frontier. It can improve performance on some tasks while worsening performance on others, even inside the same general type of knowledge work. That means AI is not a magic layer of competence, it is uneven. It can make people faster where the task fits its capabilities, and it can make people overconfident where the task falls outside them. For companies, that creates a real managerial problem. If leaders overgeneralize from the tasks where AI works, they may redesign jobs around a tool that performs inconsistently. And for workers, it creates a different pressure. They have to learn not only how to use AI, but when not to trust it.
Yeah, that's insane. It's too much. So basically, a worker now needs judgment and discernment about the work itself and about the tool?
Yeah, and that may become one of the most important forms of human value. The worker who can command, evaluate, correct, and contextualize AI may become more valuable. That is why we should not pretend the picture is only negative. PwC's 2025 AI Jobs Barometer found that workers with AI skills command a significant wage premium. So there is a real opportunity here. Some workers will benefit, some will move faster, earn more, and become more strategic because they know how to work with these systems.
Yeah, and that clearly speaks to the fact that not everyone benefits equally, right?
Exactly. A wage premium for AI-skilled workers does not settle the workplace bargain. It tells us that some workers can capture value if their skills remain scarce and visible. But others may find that AI makes their work easier to measure, easier to standardize, or easier to absorb into a process they do not control. That is the divide. Some workers become more valuable because they control the tool. Others become more vulnerable because the tool controls more of the workflow.
Right. That feels like a real pivot in the episode. AI can make you more capable, but capability is not the same as leverage.
That is the central distinction. Productivity is about output. Leverage is about bargaining power. You can become more productive and still become less secure if the organization captures the value and you absorb the risk. You can write faster, respond faster, analyze faster, and coordinate faster. But if the reward is simply a higher workload, a smaller team, or more aggressive targets, then the productivity gain does not feel like progress. It feels like pressure.
So, the uncomfortable truth we're facing is that the tool can work exactly as promised and still leave workers asking whether the promise was ever meant for them.
The workplace anxiety around AI is not only fear of an unknown technology, it is a rational response to a technology whose usefulness is becoming measurable before the return to workers has been defined. If AI creates productivity, then it also creates a distribution question. Who benefits, who decides, who shares in the gain, and what happens to the people whose work, judgment, and adaptation helped create that gain in the first place?
So the next question becomes unavoidable. Once productivity is measurable, when does it turn into headcount math?
And that is where this conversation gets more concrete. Because once AI improves output, leadership does not only ask how much more the team can do, eventually it asks how many people the team still needs.
High-interest debt can feel like a trap. With Volo, you can break free. Just choose how much you need. Set the terms that work for you. Share your story. And send the request to people you trust. Your network sees it instantly, and you're on your way. Borrow with confidence, at fair rates, from people who believe in you. Join the waitlist today at voloapp.ca.
So if segment 2 was the honest concession that AI can really make work faster, segment 3 is where the conversation gets a little more uncomfortable.
Because once productivity becomes measurable, it rarely stays neutral. It enters the budget meeting, it enters the hiring plan, it enters the restructuring memo. At first, AI is introduced as help, a way to reduce friction, accelerate output, and remove repetitive work. But once leadership sees that the same team can produce more, respond faster, or process a larger volume of work, the question changes. It is no longer only, how can we help this team? It becomes, how many people does this team actually need?
And that is the moment where productivity turns into headcount math.
Exactly. And we need to be fair about this. That question is not irrational. Businesses exist inside constraints. They have budgets, margins, investors, customers, and competitors. If a company can serve more customers with fewer bottlenecks, leaders are going to examine that. But the workplace bargain becomes morally and economically charged when the people producing the efficiency have little visibility into whether they will share in the rewards, or whether their own adaptation becomes evidence that fewer people are needed.
All right, Sophie, so let me ask the obvious question first. Are layoffs the right way to measure AI's impact on work?
They are part of the story, but they are not the whole story. Layoffs are visible, so they attract attention. And AI is increasingly being cited in job cut announcements. Challenger, Gray and Christmas has reported that AI-related cuts have become a meaningful category in 2026, including months where AI was among the leading reasons companies gave for job reductions. But if we only focus on layoffs, we miss the quieter forms of displacement. Hiring pauses, backfills that never happen, contractor work that disappears, junior support roles that are absorbed by senior employees using AI, teams that are expected to grow output without growing headcount. Those shifts may not show up as dramatic layoff headlines, but they still change the labor market inside the company.
Yeah, that's an important distinction, because if someone is never hired or a role is never replaced, it doesn't feel like a layoff, but the opportunity definitely still vanishes.
Right. And that is why IBM's 2023 hiring pause example matters. Reuters reported that IBM expected to pause or slow hiring for certain back-office roles, with roughly 7,800 jobs potentially affected by AI and automation over several years. That is not the same thing as firing 7,800 people overnight. It is more subtle. It is attrition, non-replacement, and redesigned work. But from the worker's perspective, the results can still be meaningful. The organization learns to operate with fewer people in certain functions. The future job does not appear. The old pathway narrows quietly, and that's where the anxiety becomes rational. Workers can see the direction of travel. They hear leaders talk about efficiency, digital labor, AI-first operating models, and doing more with less. They see examples like Shopify, where teams were told to consider whether AI could do the work before asking for more headcount or resources. Again, that is not necessarily an evil policy. From a management perspective, it can look like discipline, but from inside the workforce, it changes the default assumption. The human role must now justify itself against the machine alternative before it is even created.
Yeah, that phrase, before it's even created, feels daunting. I mean, AI is now clearly not only affecting jobs people have, it's affecting jobs that might not ever appear, right?
Indeed, and that is one of the quietest forms of disruption. Nobody gets called into a meeting, nobody gets a severance package, no headline says a role disappeared. The team simply stops expanding, the backfill never opens. The junior support role gets absorbed, the coordinator becomes unnecessary before anyone ever writes the job description. That is why this fear is so hard to measure. Sometimes the job AI changes most is the one the company decides not to create.
Right, okay. So let me ask you this. Where does middle management fit in all this? I mean, it seems like the general flattening of management across the board is really a major risk, right?
Middle management is vulnerable because a lot of managerial work involves coordination, reporting, status tracking, performance visibility, resource allocation, and translating information up and down the organization. Gartner has predicted that through 2026, a significant share of organizations will use AI to flatten their structures by eliminating large portions of middle management. Now, we should treat forecasts carefully. Predictions are not facts. But the logic is clear. If AI can summarize work, surface blockers, generate dashboards, analyze performance, coordinate tasks, and escalate exceptions, then some of the work that justified layers of management becomes easier to automate or compress.
Yeah, okay, but managers are not just dashboards, right? Good managers actually mentor people, they resolve conflict, they notice content, they protect teams. So
that's exactly the counterpoint. The danger is that organizations may confuse information flow with leadership. AI may be very good at producing reports, measuring activity, and highlighting patterns. But management is not only measurement, it is judgment, development, trust, coaching, prioritization, and accountability. If companies flatten management only because the reporting layer looks automatable, they may remove the human layer that helps people grow, interpret complexity, and navigate the organization. Efficiency can look clean on a chart while creating hidden costs in morale, mentorship, and decision quality.
So essentially what you're saying is that AI can make the company flatter, but not necessarily wiser.
Exactly. A flatter organization can be more agile. It can also become more brittle. If AI removes coordination work without replacing the human functions beneath it, then the company may gain speed while losing context. That is a pattern across this whole episode. AI often improves a measurable output while putting pressure on less measurable forms of value. Experience, judgment, mentorship, loyalty, institutional memory, the things that make an organization work but do not always show up neatly in a productivity dashboard.
Right, so let's talk about Klarna, because that example is probably the cleanest headcount math story that people have heard about, right?
Klarna is important because it puts the business case in very plain terms. The company said its AI assistant handled 2/3 of customer service chats in its first month and was doing the equivalent work of 700 full-time agents. That does not automatically mean 700 direct employees were laid off because of that assistant, and we should be careful not to make that claim. But the example is powerful because it shows how quickly productivity can become labor equivalency. The moment a company says an AI system does the work of hundreds of people, the workplace bargain changes. The technology is no longer just a helpful tool. It becomes a unit of capacity that can be compared against human labor. And once you compare it that way, the conclusion almost feels built in. The comparison itself creates pressure. If an AI assistant can operate all day across markets in multiple languages at lower marginal cost, then leadership has to ask what human roles remain essential, where human judgment is needed, and where people should move next. That can be a responsible conversation if it includes retraining, mobility, transparency, and shared benefit. But if the conversation is only about cost reduction, then workers become inputs in an optimization problem they did not design.
Wow. That sounds like the line. Optimization without a bargain becomes threatening.
It does, because workers are not opposed to companies becoming stronger. Most people want to work for organizations that are healthy, competitive, and capable, but they also want to know whether their own future is included in that strength. If they adopt the tools, improve the workflows, document the processes, and help the company learn where AI works, then they are participating in the transformation. The question is whether they are treated as participants or merely as temporary inputs on the way to a leaner operating model.
Jeez, that's brutal. Like, honestly, given where we're at, tell me how you think leaders should manage through all this if they want to use AI responsibly.
They have to separate efficiency from extraction. Efficiency asks, how can we create more value with the tools now available? Extraction asks, how much value can we remove from labor before the system pushes back? A responsible leader can pursue productivity while still defining reciprocity, training, redeployment, internal mobility, bonuses tied to productivity gains, clearer career paths, worker consultation, and transparency about how AI will affect hiring and roles. The problem is not that leaders ask headcount questions. The problem is when workers are expected to help answer those questions without any claim on the outcome.
So the real issue we're facing isn't whether AI makes work more efficient. It's whether that efficiency becomes a shared gain, or a quiet justification for asking fewer people to carry more of the load.
Yes, and that transition is the heart of the training your replacement economy. Workers are not only using a tool, they are helping prove what the tool can replace, compress, or reorganize. That does not mean every company will use AI destructively, but it does mean the bargain has to be made explicit. Because if productivity gains become headcount reductions without reciprocity, workers will not experience AI as progress. They will experience it as warning.
And that takes us into the next layer. Because AI does not only change how many people a company thinks it needs.
It also changes how closely people can be seen, measured, compared, and converted into data. That is where the workplace bargain becomes even more intimate, because the tool that helps you work can also show the company how you work.
Your money can do more than sit in a savings account. Browse real requests from your trusted network. See the repayment plan and the return. Fund it in seconds and start earning passive income. Lend with purpose. Put your money to work right where it matters. Join the waitlist today at voloapp.ca.
So far, we've talked about productivity, headcount, and the way AI can change the size and structure of teams, but there's another layer here that feels even more personal.
Because AI does not only help people produce work, it can also help companies observe work. It can summarize meetings, analyze messages, review tickets, compare output, track workflows, evaluate response quality, and surface patterns across entire teams. And that changes the emotional texture of the workplace. A tool that begins as assistance can also become visibility. It can help you write the email, but it can also help the organization understand how you write, how quickly you respond, how often you revise, how your performance compares, and where your process can be standardized.
That's what makes this feel different from just another productivity tool. It's not only helping you do the work, it may also be showing the company how the work best gets done.
Exactly. And this is where the workplace bargain becomes more intimate. The company is not only buying your output, it may be learning your process. Historically, a lot of professional work had a private interior. People had their own methods, habits, shortcuts, judgment calls, relationships, and informal knowledge. Managers could see the result, but not always the full path. AI changes that. The path itself becomes more legible. And once the path becomes legible, it can be measured, compared, copied, optimized, or automated.
Alright, Soph, let me ask you something directly. What's the difference between a productivity tool and a monitoring tool?
A productivity tool helps the worker act. A monitoring tool helps the organization see. And many AI systems can do both at once. A sales tool can summarize a customer call for the rep, but it can also score the rep's tone, track follow-up speed, and compare the conversation against an approved script. A support tool can help an agent answer a question, but it can also map resolution time, escalation rate, customer sentiment, and deviation from the standard response. A meeting assistant can create a helpful summary, but it also turns a private discussion into a searchable record. The same layer that improves the work can make the worker more measurable.
Right. Honestly, that's the part that feels a little unsettling. Because it doesn't really have to be sinister to start getting uncomfortable. Like, whether or not it's framed as optimization, it still comes across like surveillance, right?
It does, and that distinction matters. Not every form of measurement is abusive. Companies need visibility. Teams need feedback. Managers need to know where work is stuck and where customers are being underserved. But there is a difference between visibility that supports people and visibility that disciplines people invisibly. The Ontario Information and Privacy Commissioner's work on surveillance and algorithmic management is important because it frames workplace monitoring broadly, not just as cameras or keystrokes, but as systems that can monitor productivity, online activity, hiring, and other forms of workplace data. Once AI enters that environment, the scale and subtlety of monitoring increase.
Got it. So the question really becomes, is measurement being used primarily to improve the work or more to make the worker easier to manage?
Exactly. And workers can feel that difference even when no one says it out loud. If monitoring helps remove bottlenecks, improve training, reduce customer frustration, or make workloads fairer, people may accept it. But if monitoring feels hidden, punitive, or one-sided, it produces distrust. FM Magazine reported survey findings that many US employers already use tracking tools to monitor employee activity, with a significant share using AI analytics to measure productivity and real-time screen monitoring. Those numbers should be treated carefully because they come from a survey and may not represent every workplace equally. But the direction is clear. AI is entering not only the production layer, but the measurement layer.
Right. And I think that's where people start to feel it personally. It's one thing to measure output, It's another thing when the normal texture of your workday starts becoming something that the company can constantly read, compare, and judge, right?
Messages become data, meetings become data, calendar patterns become data, customer calls become data, support tickets become data, code commits become data, sales activity becomes data, document revisions become data. Even the informal knowledge people build over years, who to call, what usually breaks, how a customer behaves, which exception matters, can begin to move from human memory into organizational systems. That can be useful. It can make companies less dependent on one person. It can improve onboarding. It can preserve institutional memory. But it also changes the worker's relationship to their own knowledge. What used to live inside the person may now become a company asset.
Yeah, that's a powerful line. What used to live inside the person becomes a company asset. And again, it sounds useful, but it's also really one way, right?
That is the core tension. Institutional knowledge capture is not automatically bad. In fact, it can be essential. No organization should be so fragile that one person leaving means everything breaks. But when workers contribute tacit knowledge, workflows, judgment, and patterns to systems that may later reduce their own leverage, the question of reciprocity becomes unavoidable. If your knowledge improves the system, what do you receive? Training, mobility, recognition, equity, better pay, a clearer role? Or does the company simply become less dependent on you? This is where AI-first workplace policies get tricky, because companies are not just offering AI, they are making AI usage part of the culture, and that can create pressure even when the intention is positive. Reporting on companies like Duolingo, Shopify, Meta, and Box shows how quickly AI use can move from optional experimentation to expected behavior. In some cases, AI is connected to hiring, resource allocation, or performance culture. Duolingo is a useful example because its AI-first posture generated enough concern that the company later had to clarify that job performance mattered more than simply using AI. That clarification matters. It shows the risk of turning AI adoption itself into a signal of worth. If employees feel they are being judged not only by the quality of their work, but by whether they are visibly using AI enough, the tool becomes part of workplace status.
Yeah, it's a lot. It seems like workers are feeling pressure from both sides. Use AI so you don't fall behind, but also know that using AI makes your work more visible and maybe more replaceable.
That is the bind. Refuse the tool and you may look outdated. Use the tool and you may help expose how much of your work can be standardized. Use it poorly and you may be judged. Use it well and your output may become the new baseline. That is why this cannot be handled only as a technology rollout. It is a trust problem inside the organization. Workers need to know what data is being collected, how it will be used, whether it will affect discipline or promotion, whether AI-generated metrics can be challenged, and whether they have any voice in how monitoring systems are deployed.
Right, so what do you think a fair monitoring bargain would actually look like?
A fair bargain would begin with transparency. Workers should know when AI is being used to assess, summarize, score, or analyze their work. It would include limits, so every interaction does not become a permanent performance record. It would include context, because numbers without context can misrepresent the reality of work. It would include appeal, so workers can challenge automated judgments or misleading analytics. It would include participation, so employees are consulted before monitoring systems reshape their day-to-day experience. And it would include a clear distinction between AI as support and AI as discipline. The workplace can use AI to learn, but if it uses AI to watch, rank, and pressure people without consent or reciprocity, then the tool stops feeling like help. It becomes management infrastructure.
Right, which brings us back to the larger theme of this episode. AI is not just changing output, it's changing visibility as well.
And visibility changes power. A worker who is more visible may be easier to support, but also easier to compare. Easier to coach, but also easier to discipline. Easier to understand, but also easier to replace. That is why the monitoring layer matters. It reveals the deeper fear running through this whole episode. Not simply that AI will take the job, but that AI will turn the job into a stream of data the worker no longer controls.
What we've been discussing feels like a bigger shift. It's not whether companies need fewer people. It's whether companies can now see so much more of each person's work that workers themselves have less control over how their value is understood.
And once companies can see more, measure more, and capture more, the final question becomes unavoidable. What would make that bargain fair? What would turn AI from extraction into genuine augmentation? Because productivity alone is not enough. Measurement alone is not enough. Efficiency alone is not enough. The future of work will depend on whether the people helping create the value are included in the return.
With Volo, lending and borrowing is effortless. No spreadsheets. No awkward follow-ups. Volo automates everything, from repayments to reminders, so your lending feels effortless. Every payment is tracked, updated, and secured, with encryption protecting every transaction. Automate with peace of mind. Volo protects what matters, so you can focus on what's next. Join the waitlist today at voloapp.ca.
So we've now looked at the whole arc. AI can make work faster. That productivity can become headcount math. And the same tools that help people work can also help make their work more visible, measurable, and easier to capture.
Which brings us to the question underneath the whole episode. What would make this bargain fair? Because the answer cannot be that companies should ignore AI. That would be unserious. AI is useful. It can reduce friction, improve service, accelerate analysis, support workers, preserve knowledge, and help organizations operate better. But usefulness does not settle the moral or economic question. It only makes the question more urgent. If workers help create the productivity dividend, what claim do they have on it?
And that feels like the right way to land this. Not anti-AI, not anti-business, but asking what workers receive in return.
Exactly. The future of work will not be decided only by whether AI creates value. It will be decided by how that value is distributed. If the gains return to workers through training, higher pay, better tools, internal mobility, shorter work weeks, clearer career paths, equity, or greater autonomy, then AI can become genuine augmentation. It can help people become more capable and more secure at the same time. But if the gains flow upward while the risks flow downward, if workers adapt, document, train, improve, and expose their workflows while receiving only higher expectations and thinner teams, then AI becomes extraction.
And we do have to acknowledge that some workers will win in this transition.
Yes, and that matters. PwC's 2025 AI Jobs Barometer found that workers with AI skills command a significant wage premium, and Microsoft's Worker Index shows that many leaders are considering new AI-specific roles, even while some are also considering headcount reductions. So this is not a simple story where every worker loses. Some people will become more valuable because they learn how to direct these systems, evaluate outputs, redesign workflows, and bring human judgment into AI-assisted environments. The worker who can control the tool may gain leverage.
But that still leaves the harder question. What happens to the workers who are measured by the tool, reorganized by the tool, or made less scarce by the tool?
That is the divide. AI can create a premium for some workers while weakening the bargain for others. It can make one role more strategic and another role more standardized. It can elevate the person who supervises the system while compressing the person whose work becomes the system's training ground. So the presence of opportunity does not erase the presence of risk. The question is whether organizations build broad pathways into that opportunity or allow AI to produce a narrow class of beneficiaries and a wider class of workers who feel increasingly disposable.
So what does reciprocity actually look like? Because it's easy to say the word, harder to define it.
Reciprocity begins with honesty. Workers should know how AI is being introduced, what data is being collected, how productivity gains will be measured, and whether those gains may affect hiring, promotions, evaluation, or job security. Then it requires investment. If a company wants AI adoption, it should provide real training, not just pressure. It should create internal mobility paths for people whose tasks are changing. It should reward employees who improve workflows, not simply absorb their improvements into higher expectations. And where AI creates meaningful efficiency, leaders should ask whether some of that value can return through bonuses, compensation, better schedules, reduced administrative burden, or new roles.
That sounds like the difference between asking workers to participate in the transformation and asking them quietly to accept it.
Exactly. Participation changes the emotional meaning of AI. When workers are consulted, trained, protected, and included, AI can feel like a shared transition. When workers are simply told to adapt, while decisions are made above them, AI feels like a warning. And this matters for companies too. If workers believe AI is being used against them, they will hide usage, resist adoption, distrust metrics, withhold knowledge, or disengage. Trust is not a soft issue here, it is operational infrastructure.
That's an important point. Companies may think they can force adoption, but forced adoption can produce its own backlash.
Yes, and that backlash does not always look like open rebellion. Sometimes it looks like quiet resistance. People use AI secretly because they do not trust the policy, or they refuse to share process knowledge because they fear it will be used to replace them, or they comply outwardly while emotionally checking out. If companies want AI to work, they need the judgment, creativity, context, and cooperation of the people already inside the organization. But people do not give their best knowledge to a system they believe is designed to make them weaker.
So leadership has to decide what kind of AI transition they're actually building.
Yes, there are two paths. One path treats AI as an extraction layer. Capture worker knowledge, increase output, reduce labor, tighten measurement, and return the gains mainly to capital. The other treats AI as an augmentation layer. Improve work, share gains, preserve human judgment, strengthen training, and make workers more capable rather than merely more productive. The technology does not choose between those paths. Leaders do.
And that's probably the most important point. AI doesn't automatically create the bargain. People do.
AI can accelerate a workplace, but it cannot tell us what fairness means. It can summarize the meeting, draft the report, write the code, measure the workflow, and optimize the process. But it cannot decide whether the person behind that process becomes more secure or more disposable. That is a leadership decision, a governance decision, a cultural decision, and ultimately a moral decision.
So where does that leave the worker listening to this?
It leaves them with both caution and agency. Learn the tools. Understand where AI strengthens your work and where it weakens your leverage. Build judgment that cannot be reduced to output alone. Become the person who can evaluate, direct, contextualize, and improve AI-assisted work. But also pay attention to the bargain. Ask how the organization is using the gains. Ask whether training is real. Ask whether productivity expectations are changing. Ask whether monitoring is transparent. Ask whether workers have a voice. Because the issue is not only whether you use AI, it is whether you are included in the value AI creates.
That feels like the cleanest way to close it. The question isn't whether AI belongs in work. It's whether workers belong in the gains.
And that is the final principle. Productivity without reciprocity becomes devaluation. If AI makes organizations more efficient while workers become more anxious, something has been missed. If AI increases output while reducing security, something has been broken. And if AI captures knowledge, workflows, judgment, and effort without returning value to the people who supplied them, then the promise of empowerment becomes something else. It becomes extraction. But that is not inevitable. AI can make work better, it can remove friction, it can extend judgment, it can help people become more capable and organizations become more resilient, but only if the bargain is visible. Only if the gains are shared. Only if workers are treated not as temporary inputs into a smarter system, but as participants in the future that system is building.
That's it for the show. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and reach out to us anytime at talk@torontotalks.ca. We'll see you next time right here on Toronto Talks, where big ideas come to life
And curiosity never sleeps.